Today is the 1-year anniversary of the 1.0 release of Grounded, and what better day to announce the next big update than today? The weekly developer livestream for today is scheduled to have many special guests, and I expect one of them to be game director Adam Brennicke, who will undoubtedly reveal what is coming in the 1.3 update for Grounded. What is most likely to be coming in that update? Let's take a quick look at the past year, as I think that will help narrow down what you can expect in the major update planned for the end of this year. So what I want to do is take a quick high-level look at the major patches that came after the 1.0 release. And the reason I want to do that is, like I said, I think this is going to give us a good idea of what could possibly be coming in the 1.3 update, because what I'm going to do is look at what these things added. I'm just going to do a high-level quick overview of these, and I'm going to show you how it affected actual interest in the game and why I think there's a pretty good chance of it being narrowed down to a couple of things that could possibly be added in 1.3, because I think the developers are going to want to target ideas or features for the game that would impact the game the most and bring the most people back to it. So first up, let's take a look at the 1.1 update. That was the holiday treat update. It came in December 2022, a couple months after 1.0 release. And what this added was mostly quality of life stuff. It added an extra backpack road to your inventory, which was awesome. Hot pouch update. You can go up the zip lines, many building pieces and base decorations, changing your light colors, being able to cook at the small little insects with the spicy coltana, so they would turn straight away into cooked meat, adding water coolers to the lab, so there was a source of water inside of them. And then there was a pretty big overhaul of the mutations that were the ones that were unlocked by using the different weapon types. There was many other changes in this, but those were the high level ones. The second big update that came after the 1.0 release was the 1.2 update, which was the super duper update. This came in April of 2023, 7 months roughly after the 1.0 release. And the main features of this were they added Wasp to the game. They added the super duper machine, which allowed you to dupe different resource or dupe pretty much any resource in the game. This was really helpful if you had one-of-a-kind items and you were playing multiplayer, or if there were resources that were just hard to farm or you just didn't have a lot of, then you could dupe them if you had excess raw science. They added the coziness feature, which was pretty cool. That gives you some buffs, more base decorations. They added the handy net, different building options. They changed turrets pretty significantly. They added the Wasp to the yard along with the Wasp Queen. And then just about a week later, they added the 1.2.2 update, which was a complete surprise. This was the one that added the new endgame boss, which was the infected broodmother, as well as some additional armor pieces for the original broodmother. They added some new achievements, some new building pieces, and some bug fixes and stuff like that. But the main thing here was adding the new boss. So how do those updates impact interest in the game? A good way of gauging interest in something is by checking Google Trends. You can search both the search history or the search volume for Google as well as search volume on YouTube. And what I did was I plugged Grounded in here, picked games, because unfortunately didn't have Grounded as a video game term, because Grounded obviously is a common term, but I was able to filter it down here, and this does match up really well with what I expected. And what I see here is the peak interest in the game was, not surprisingly, when the game first released back in July of 2020. That's when the early access opened up. You'll notice that pretty quickly after that, it kind of cratered because honestly, there wasn't a lot to do in the game. There was a little spike here, which was around the first anniversary of the game. And then it kind of leveled off again. And you'll notice that the next big spike wasn't until right around 1.0 or just after the 1.0 update. That's when it kind of got its spike. This is for the web search. And then it kind of trails off here. The 1.1 update came around this time. You'll notice it's kind of down here in like a little chasm here. And it did have a little resurgence at the end of 2022. The only thing I can think of that would make sense here is when this was the first time the game was like pretty heavily discounted on Steam. I'm not sure if it was heavily discounted on Windows as well, or maybe Xbox. But I know on Steam it was like 30 or 40% off. So there was a little bit of a spike in players here. But you'll notice quickly after that, it kind of dropped back down. The next big spike occurred right around the 1.2, 1.2.2 update. And what I think this is leading me to believe is that the developers have to know the interest. They're obviously going to know how many people are playing the game because they can see the back end on both the Xbox, Windows, and like on Steam, obviously. We can see the Steam player count, which does kind of follow along with a similar trend. And if we look at YouTube, we're going to get a pretty similar picture here. So as you can see, YouTube's pretty similar. Spike back here, the peak back here when the game first released in early access. A little bit of a spike around the 1-year birthday, kind of flatline. Big spike here around 1.0, just after it. Then it kind of falls off. You'll notice here there's not really any spikes at all during the 1.1 update. And then it kind of just craters down here. And then it has a big resurgence here. This is when the infected broodmother was added and the 1.2 update. And now you can see it's slowly trailing off. So what do these trend charts kind of show us? And I can tell you from my own experience, by looking at the performance of my videos and by looking at the volume of the interest in my videos and the views I'm getting over since the 1.0, Interest in the game is obviously falling off. That's fully to be expected because once a game fully releases, even if it's getting updated after that, it's not going to have as much interest unless there's something major. But what this points out to me is, and I saw this firsthand, the 1.1 update, which added mostly quality of life stuff and just kind of like some base building stuff, did not really bring people back to the game. They weren't really interested in it. The big interest was when they added the new endgame boss and when they added the Wasp Queen. So basically the boss is being added to the game. So after looking at all that information and kind of just thinking logically what I think is going to happen in the 1.3 update, I narrowed it down to 5 things that I think are most likely to be announced. And it could be more than one of these things, but I think at least one of these things has to occur if there's going to be any major interest in the game going forward. First up, and I think most obviously, is going to be more bosses. As you could see from that trend, as you could see from, I know, interest in my videos and my streams, when I streamed the Infected Broodmother fight, it was like the second or third biggest stream I ever had. And the only bigger one that I had in terms of like average viewers was about a couple weeks after the 1.0 update when I did a full playthrough on WoW mode. The first stream for that was the only one that actually had a higher average for the entire stream. So there was major interest in that. That stream for me on YouTube has more views than any other stream I've ever had by far because people watched it after the fact. I know when I did the video on the Infected Broodmother, it was the fastest video I ever had get to 100,000 views. I think it had 100,000 views in the first 12 or 14 hours or something like that. Or it was definitely within the first day. I've never had a video get that many views that quickly. So there was massive interest in that. And like I said, there was very little interest in the 1.1 update. So while I know a lot of people like the building stuff, it is not something that I think is going to draw massive interest in the game. So which bosses are most likely to be added? I've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go too deep into this because I think it's pretty obvious. The 2 most likely bosses are going to be ones that were found in the game files or there was something along the lines within the game files and they ended up not making it into the game. First is going to be the Ant Queen. Most likely this would be a Fire Ant Queen because the Fire Ant Hill is massive. It would make more sense to have a Fire Ant Queen up there because we already have the Assistant Manager in the Black Ant Hill. The Red Ant Hill really is too small to have a boss in it, but they could maybe they could put one in there. It would make more sense if it was in the Red Ant Hill than the Black Ant Hill because the Black Ant Hill already has a boss in it. So the Red Ant Hill, if it's a Red Ant Queen, it could just be like a first level boss that you fight, like the easiest one. If they do a Fire Ant Queen, it could be much more difficult. And then the second most likely one's going to be the Lizard, which was in the game files, which was shown at some point. It was leaked out there. It was actually, I think, in one of the versions of the game, or there was a public test server where the people got into it and they weren't supposed to see one of the builds. It was the wrong build or something like that. And the Lizard was found. The Lizard's going to be like under the sandbox. That rock is behind the sandcastle. It's already set up for an arena. I don't think they will have trouble balancing a Lizard because Small Land has big bosses in it, one of which is a lizard, another which is a bird. So I think it would make sense. I think they could balance it around the Lizard. Maybe they have to change a little bit from what they initially planned, but adding those 2 bosses in the next big update, I think would definitely draw some people in. Maybe not as many people as the Infected Broodmother because that was kind of like the endgame boss, but if these are just adding 2 more bosses, that will definitely draw quite a bit of interest. Next up is going to be one that people have been asking for as long as I can possibly remember, and it's one of the most common things that is asked, and that is going inside the house. Now, up until this point, and repeatedly we've been told, there was never any plans to go inside the house. It kind of doesn't make sense story-wise because the story is already kind of written, but if they want to get a lot of people back into the game, being able to go inside the house, even if it's just one room or maybe going under the house into the basement, just one like little small part of the house, it doesn't have to be the whole house. I think that would attract a lot of people to come back to the game because it will be a massive new area to go into. It'll be an area people want to go into. I know people have talked about going in other backyards. I feel like that would be way too much of an undertaking. It's also been speculated maybe going inside the shed, but honestly, I don't know if that's going to interest too many people. Yeah, it'll be another biome, but realistically, the only biome that people really care about, unless it's like a brand new whole yard, which would add a whole new game, would be going inside the house. Next up is going to be something that I've heard mentioned kind of briefly by a couple of people. And when I asked about it, I didn't really get any answers on it. But apparently it's been going around. There's a rumor that they might be focusing on a PvP mode. Now, personally, for me, would that matter? Do I think that would actually bring a lot of people to the game? And the answer to that is, as of right now, no. Now, PvP in survival games is definitely something that can keep people playing for a long time. If you look at games like Minecraft, which have PvP, if you look at Rust, you look at other survival games, Ark has PvP. Those games where there's PvP modes in them, people will play them they'll just play them for years and years and years. But the difference in those games is you can have far more people on a server. In a game where the limit is 4 players, and with as of right now, the current networking of the game and the netcode of the game, giving the host typically a massive advantage. And in many cases, if you're not the host, you're just not going to be able to, you're going to have high latency or high ping, and it's just going to be almost impossible to beat the host. I kind of feel like PvP, while it could be something that could add life to the game, especially if they can increase the number of players in the game from 4 maybe to, like, I don't know, 16 or 20 or 25 or something like that, that would definitely possibly help. They'd have to do something with matchmaking though, because I can't imagine most people have 10 or 15 or 20 people to play with. But just focusing on a PvP mode with only a cap of 4 players, that might interest some players, but I don't think that will end up being a massive draw and bringing a lot of people back to the game. The fourth of the 5 things that I thought of, which I think could possibly bring people back to the game, and this is one that I've been asking for a long time, and that would be more base defenses. Right now, you do the mixers, you do the final defense of the game, your base does periodically get attacked from faction reactivity, but the reality is the base defenses in the game are kind of lackluster. The best strategy for most of them is just literally doing an onion build where you just build layer of walls and just stand there and shoot the enemies or with a ranged weapon, or just melee them. And right now there's only a couple of traps in the game. I was really hoping that the 1.0 update would have more base defenses in them. I think base defenses could extend the life of the game. If you look at games like 7 Days to Die, which are they're exclusively focused on base defenses. 7 Days to Die has been in early access for 10 years, or coming up on 10 years. People are still playing. It actually is currently, I think right now, has more players than it's ever had before, or it's definitely trending upward. And adding base defenses, especially if it was kind of in that vein where it was like, let's see how long you can stay alive and you get attacked every so many days, I think that would draw in maybe not as many people as some of the other things I've already mentioned, but it would certainly attract a larger crowd. And for me personally, if they did it right, I would 100% go back and play the game and be more than happy to play the game for the next several months, if not longer. And then last but not least is going to be New Game Plus. After you beat the game, you can continue playing, but to be honest, there's really no point, right? You can basically just sit there and build a base, fight the same bugs. You're going to be constantly getting attacked by the orc bugs because even after you finish the game, they just keep coming. That gets quite annoying at some point. I mean, well, it's going to get quite annoying pretty quickly because you'll be doing anything and they just randomly show up. And they're not hard to kill. They just become a nuisance. And more often than not, you probably end up running away from them. But they just keep chasing and chasing and chasing. So adding a New Game Plus where after you finish the game and you basically beat it, you can completely restart over and maybe keep your mutations. And maybe they add some variations to the game. I know people like New Game Plus. For me, it would have to be something just kind of out of the ordinary. I tried New Game Plus in Starfield, played it for like an hour or two, and was like, yeah, this is just basically almost the same game. It's not that much different than the base game. So I didn't really care for much for it. I've tried it a couple times in other games, and really most games don't really do it for me. So if they did that, I know a lot of people love New Game Plus, so that could keep people going and maybe bring some people back to the game, especially if that restarting over does something different. Like maybe you start with all your mutations unlocked, but everything else is wiped. You start off with no gear again, and then maybe they maybe just randomly have bugs spawn different places or something like that. It'd have to be something different so you're not just playing through the game exactly the same way, but I certainly think that could be something that could bring people back as well. So based on everything I talked about in this video, I feel like today is the day that is the most likely day that they're going to provide the first announcement of what's going to be coming in the next big update for Grounded. They're going to have more eyes on their stream than they have at any point in the recent past with the 1.0 celebration. If they have some bigger content creators on there, maybe they'll draw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of viewers. And honestly, I feel like at this point, based on the trends that I showed and the information I showed, looking at my own metrics and stuff like that, and just looking at my own personal playing of the game, as well as friends of mine, I haven't played the game since the middle of May. I actually went and checked. I was like, yeah, I haven't actually played it since the middle of May. Other than one time I played it to do the Only Up mod that I tried for an hour or two. And even when I streamed that, there wasn't really much interest in it. And I feel like most of you are probably in the same boat as me. You've probably stopped playing the game or you're not playing it very often anymore. And you're just looking for a reason to come back. So hopefully they'll announce something today that will bring at least some of you back. Hopefully they announce something today that will interest me to keep playing it. No matter what, if whatever they add, I'm going to try it just to see what it is. And my plan is going to be to watch the dev live stream today. If they make any announcements, I'll make a quick update video. I plan on streaming later today as well. And if they give us any information, I'll talk about it during the live stream. If not, we can just sit there and keep speculating while I play a different game. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you found this video interesting, make sure to hit the like button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.